So somewhere underneath all of this snow and ice is the future site of our new food forest garden, which I am really, really thrilled about. And I am currently planning for that. I'm in the planning phase, not doing any designs yet, not doing any purchasing or any of that, but in the future I will do more videos about that. So this is basically the first video in a series, and perhaps depending on when you're watching this, you can actually see the rest of that series, which is kind of cool because you may know better than I do how that turns out. So hopefully it's all good, but that's why we're planning, so that we can have a better chance of success with that. But I am stuck inside right now. It's the winter, it's cold out, I can't do much, and I am definitely stuck inside because of this here thing. So, the middle of last week, I walked out the front door and slipped on ice and broke both bones in my wrist, in my dominant hand. So, had some surgery already, and I am just stuck here, can't work really, just letting that heal. And I also can't use a computer mouse very well, so I'm trying to do this video on my iPad and seeing how that turns out. And the audio is not the best, it's not as good as it usually is, so I'll try to speak up. But at the same time, it's pretty exciting because Some Room to Grow now has over 500 subscribers. And that is just fantastic. And thank you so much to everyone who is subscribed and everyone who's watching these videos and liking them and supporting the channel. That means I'm halfway to monetizing the channel, and then I'll be able to actually start getting some revenue to put back into the videos and covering extraneous costs. And yeah, so that's very exciting, and I'm really happy to see that. So thank you again for everyone who is supporting the channel, and I've got a lot more on the way for this year. And the main thing is what I'm talking about today, and so I'm working on planning for this food forest, and that means I'm doing a lot of research and observation and some soil testing and preparation. And so these things are not in any particular order. You can start them at any time, and you should really probably just start them all immediately. So for instance, I started preparing our soil last fall. I did some tests first. I went around and took samples, sent those to a lab, and got the results back of exactly what is in there for nutrients and minerals and pH levels and the health of the soil. So it was very healthy, but there are definitely some things we can do to improve it, like pretty much all soils. It can definitely benefit from having some more organic matter in it. And so I put down wood chips and fall leaves, and I'm letting this just sit over the winter. So it's probably frozen at the moment, but when it does actually get up above freezing, and especially in the spring, all of this will be right there to start decomposing and improving the soil more, and lighten up the texture a little bit and attract more earthworms. And it's going to be a much better soil than it was, and it'll be ready to go. So I definitely recommend up to a year before you want to start doing this, start putting down some organic matter, straw, wood chips, mulch, whatever your mulch of choice, to really to get that process started, because like with most nature, it will take time. So while that organic matter is just sitting there decomposing over the winter and improving the soil, that means I've got all of this time to research as much as I possibly can. And since I can't work, I've got lots of time. So I definitely recommend starting your research with native species, because they are already so well adapted to your area. You know that they're going to survive well in your climate. They are going to have fewer, if any, disease problems or pest problems. The local wildlife and insects have already been coexisting with these species for thousands of years. They help each other out. They help spread seeds, feed each other, provide habitat and protection. Natives is the place to start, because in so many cases you will actually find something that is almost exactly like what you want to grow, but is actually a native species and will probably fare a lot better than something that's non-native. So, for example, I've been wanting to grow lupins because they are a nitrogen fixer, and they're very attractive looking flower, and they are great for pollinators, bringing in beneficial insects. And so this, hopefully it's focusing for you, but in red it shows the non-native versions of lupins. But for alternatives, you can go to page 37 and see all about wild lupins, which are essentially the same thing, but the native version of that species, and they'll still help to fix nitrogen, bring in butterflies and bees and lots of beneficial insects. So yes, still essentially filling that same role as a non-native species. So I definitely encourage you to start there, because at some point you will have to start making decisions about what you're actually going to grow. And if you know you will have a much better chance of success if you're growing mostly native plants. And that's not to say that you have to only grow natives. At some point, there are going to be plenty of other things that you'll want to grow, as long as they are not going to cause a lot of problems with the other species. They're not going to be invasive, and it just really helps to spend that time researching, getting to know local wildlife and insect species, and how they interact with native plant species, so that you can have a much better chance of a successful garden. Through all of this, you should be taking notes, start a journal to just make observations about everything that's going on your property and in the surrounding area, neighbors' yards, without being too creepy, of course, but just start taking note of sunlight and local wildlife and insects and plant species, trees that are already growing on your property, where you have shade, where it's windy, where rain falls, where rain collects. All of these things are going to be incredibly useful as you go into the actual design process. And you can learn much more about all of this stuff reading books on permaculture and how to trap and sequester water and hold on to water as long as you can to keep feeding plants through dry periods. And please excuse my cat freaking out in the background, but yeah, it's basically just being patient and just sitting and watching what's going on, seeing all of the natural interactions that are taking place with weather and light and wildlife and all of that stuff. It's all going to be very helpful, and you'll understand much more about all of that as you continue to read and research through all of that as well. So that's it for the planning phase of the food forest: research, observation, and soil preparation. So we'll get into design more and the next steps in a couple of months. Once I can get back to drawing again, then I can come up with some design ideas, and I'll talk about the decisions that we make for exactly what we want to grow and why. But for now, thanks for watching, and thanks again for 500 subscribers. Here's to many more. And again, we've got a lot going on for this year, so I need to get back in shape here. Cats. So, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.